What's up, everyone, and welcome to Per My Last Email, the show where we give you the hot takes and tactics to navigate work life. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kayla.
And we have a fun show for you today because we're going to the newspaper.
The newspaper.
We're reading a headline that came out recently, which
It hit our doorstep at 5 a.m. this morning.
That's true. We still order the paper to our door.
Yeah,
We're
we
old
opened
school.
it over our cereal, our Cheerios.
We're old school media personalities. We are talking about Amazon's return to office mandate.
Yep.
And in general, the return to office versus hybrid work versus remote work culture that we're all trying to navigate right now.
So why don't you break down exactly what Amazon has said?
Okay, so Andy Jassy is the CEO. He's the CEO now that Jeff Bezos is off on yachts and absolutely shredded.
Yoked.
Just yoked.
Yeah.
He's not running Amazon anymore. So Andy Jassy, the new Amazon CEO, wrote a letter that basically said, hey, everyone, get your ass back to the office.
5 days.
5 days a week. You have to go, if you're an Amazon employee, into an office. It doesn't need to be the one in Seattle. They have a few offices all over the country, but you have to be in person 5 days a week. Some exceptions for like random cases, but you're in office 5 days a week. The other thing he said in his memo was that they need to increase the ratio of IC to managers by 15%.
Yeah.
AKA, they either need to fire managers, they need to hire more ICs, or they need to take managers and make them individual contributors.
And let's be honest, they're not hiring more ICs.
They're not hiring more ICs. They have like 1.5 million employees in their corporate.
That's so many.
So many.
That's insane.
But think of it, it's warehouse, it's delivery drivers, but their corporate staff is at 350,000 now. And I think the sense of this memo was our corporate staff is getting way too big. And like we don't have that dog in us anymore. We're out working remotely. We're logging off at 4 p.m. and like it's time to lock in, and that's why they're returning to the office. Thoughts, Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is like I don't really care.
My first thought is I don't work at Amazon, so why is the Times telling me this?
No, but honestly, why I think this is important, besides like, okay, 350,000 people are going to be like commuting, and that means probably worse traffic for me.
Well, actually, I think there is an office in New York,
I'm sure there is.
I think we'll be fine though.
Yeah, it's probably
traffic's already pretty bad.
Fair point.
Yeah.
But I do think that what's interesting is that this is the first big tech company to install 5-day in-office requirements.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, is this the beginning of a trend? Are we all going back to pre-COVID times?
Do you actually think this will start a trend for big tech?
I think everyone hates being the first and loves to follow.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when Netflix was like, we're not a family. We hire fast, fire faster, or whatever. And everyone was like, oh, thank goodness, we can do it.
We can finally fire people.
Exactly.
Thank you, Reed Hastings.
We've never been able to.
So for context, only 7% of tech companies that have 1,000 or more employees, which Amazon clearly is, have a full in-office 5 days a week culture. So 93% are doing fully remote or a version of hybrid. This is not the norm.
Yeah.
However, a lot of those numbers happened because of the pandemic, and now the pandemic's kind of cooled down. So maybe Amazon is the first and it gives people cover to start doing this now. What I really think this is, though, it's not about return to office. This is layoffs in disguise. 100%, this is layoffs in disguise. They want to fire a bunch of people. They've already alluded, like, they bury the lead in this memo. Every article you see is about the return to office. But the real thing is, like, they think they have too many managers.
Yeah.
They think they have too many people. And to me, the return to office is just the cop-out. We don't want to have to do a lot of work to figure out who to fire and, like, have those conversations. So let's just put a giant filter on this.
Yep.
If you care about the company, you're not going to complain and you're going to show up 5 days a week. If you're kind of in or you're kind of out, this is probably going to get you to quit.
Yep.
We don't have to pay severance, and we just solved two problems at one.
Yeah,
basically.
Except that this is where I think like all of these layoffs by doing return to office, first of all, they had already had 3 days a week in office at this point.
Which they started in 2023.
So it's like, yes, they've already started doing this. They've already weeded some people out.
They just, not enough people quit the first time.
But what really pisses me off about this is that the people that, like, if that's their idea that, oh, we just want the people that like don't have that dog in them to like quit.
Yeah.
And that way we don't have to pay severance. That's not necessarily who they're going to be weeding out. right? Like the people that they're going to be weeding out are people like working mothers who need the flexibility, who have adapted or maybe moved their families to situations that are a little bit more forgiving for people that are working from home.
Yeah.
It's, you know, any working parent, anyone who has any situation where maybe they live 2 hours outside, they moved into the country.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't mean that they're a bad worker.
Well, there's so many good points you brought up. And so the New York Post and Business Insider actually got a hold of Amazon's internal messaging. Like it was leaked.
Yeah.
And a lot of people brought this up. Amazon, do you remember when Amazon's whole thing was like, we want to be the world's best employer? They did this whole marketing a couple years ago about we want to be, you know, obviously so super great to our customers, and that's always driven them since day one.
Yep.
But now they're like, we also want to be the world's best employer.
Which is hilarious because they have their people in warehouses peeing in bottles. But whatever.
Exactly.
Allegedly.
Again,
allegedly.
marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
But everyone is like, okay, you want to be the world's best employer, but you're putting in a condition now that ostracizes, for example, like working moms or working dads that need the flexibility. And so like, how are you actually the world's best employer if you're forcing people to return to the office, which cuts out a ton of potential employees, both from the hiring perspective, but also cuts off a ton of people that currently work at Amazon that now won't be able to. So there seems to be a little bit of like a contradiction here, but also Andy Jassy in his note is like, our internal data suggests that we have better productivity and you can learn more in the office. And I don't have access to their internal data, but there's this researcher named Nick Bloom who's like,
your favorite.
He's my favorite person. This is like the nerdiest thing, but he's been studying remote work and hybrid work since like the 90s, and probably no one cared. And then COVID happened and he was like, this is my time.
It's his Super Bowl.
This is my Super Bowl. He's like, oh, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
So he is quoted in every single article that talks about work from home or remote work. And he's like, we have to stop taking CEOs' anecdotes like as gospel. And here's what the data actually suggests, that there's a small but positive increase in productivity when companies adopt work from home measures. And so the data actually shows that this increases productivity. So I'm not sure what Amazon's data shows, but it doesn't seem to jive with what the data Nick Bloom is seeing.
Yeah, but also it's like, okay, the increased productivity of 3 days wasn't enough in 2023. You've had a full year and a half of data, and you're like, no, you know what's going to work? 5 days.
Yeah. So I just don't think this is actually about productivity. I think this is a riff or a layoff in disguise, and they're trying to kill two birds with one stone here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I went to X or Twitter, whatever. I went to X.
Yeah. That's when your day starts to go downhill.
I know. And I spent a long time today doing that, and it was purely research for this conversation.
Yeah.
But I was trying to see like what, you know, everyone was saying, like what people were talking about this. And there were people that were posting like, I quit. I have actually just received my offer and I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
Because of this specifically. Right. And then there was also people who were saying, maybe they were conspiracy theories a little bit. So remember, I found this on X, on Twitter.
It was like there's people saying that the moon landing was fake too. Like, did you hear this news?
Yeah, that was only every other. So I've discounted those, every other tweet. But basically what some people were saying was like, Amazon receives a lot of tax credits from cities for like
corporate offices
in those cities. But if people aren't showing up, then it's not stimulating the economy. You know, people aren't like buying their little sweet green around the corner.
Yeah.
That's employing fewer people then, which means that the incentives for those cities to give them those tax breaks and tax incentives decreases.
Very true.
So, I mean, it's a conspiracy, but
I don't think that's a conspiracy. I think that's just like logically makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those tax credits probably have like 5 to 10 year terms. So I don't think they're like yanking them right now. They probably already got some of them, but I do think that's true. The way that cities are built now has changed because of more remote work. And Nick Bloom talks about this too. Like there's just more sweet greens in the suburbs now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay. Yeah.
It shifted where the economy is. It didn't like delete sweet green.
People aren't suddenly saving money.
Yeah.
In fact, they're probably spending more on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, so this is my interesting thing. Like ever since, so in Andy Jassy's letter, he's like, we always have been inventive and we've been customer obsessed. And like, we've always found a better way to do things at Amazon. And that's who we are. And so I'm bringing everyone back because we missed that during remote work. But it kind of seems like contradictory that Amazon has always prided itself on being super innovative and coming up with the new things. And then there's been this breakthrough new technology, which is remote work capabilities and technologies. And it feels like instead of embracing them and being like, we're actually going to find a way to make our culture in the remote world or hybrid world better, they're like, no, that's too hard. Let's just go back to the old days where everyone has to be in an office because we haven't figured out how to make culture great hybrid. And it seems like they're just going backwards instead of tackling the hard problem, which is a lot of companies are facing. And I just feel like this is like kind of whack. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And another thing that he mentioned was like, as we grew and hired more people, like that stretches the limits of a great culture, which I think actually is a really good thing to admit.
Yeah.
But the solution isn't forcing everyone to spend 8 to 12 hours a day in an office. The solution is to figure out how to, motivate and inspire your employees in a way that works for them.
Yeah.
Also, this goes back to that notion that productivity and visibility are the same thing, which really pisses me off because I think that's not true. Like, I work best from 7 to 3. And if I'm not in a physical office at 5 o'clock, that doesn't mean that I didn't do all of my work and I didn't do good work.
Yeah.
Like, that shit pisses me off so much.
It's also interesting because this note was all about, we have too many managers, we don't have enough ICs. The people that are closest to the problem are the ones that can best solve it. And we want to destroy bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Like, he literally set up a bureaucracy email where Amazon employees can email if they see bureaucracy that's getting in their way. But again, this is contradictory because you're doing the ultimate top-down approach, which instead of empowering individual contributors or their managers to make a decision on should you be in the office or should you be hybrid or should you be fully remote, you top-down centralized bureaucrat saying, no, you have to come into the office. So this just, to me, reeks of hypocrisy. Like, you're saying one thing, but you're doing the other thing. So that's my issue with it. Now, to play devil's advocate.
Oh, here we go. White man plays devil's advocate.
Look, it's our role on earth to do this. I admit. I don't think having a policy that's like, we want everyone to be in office is necessarily bad. Like, I'm not saying it's illegal what Amazon is doing. You can choose to have the culture you want. And if I was at a startup, for example, where there was 10 people, I might want to be in person. I know tons of friends who are like, I'm only applying to roles that have an office in New York because I'm sick of this hybrid stuff. I'm sick of remote. I want to be in concert with my colleagues. I want to be in person with my colleagues. So I get that desire, but for a company of 1.5 million people already spread across the US, you're not a startup. And so I would empower teams to make those decisions, at the team level, but to make this decision company-wide for a company of that size just seems a little backwards.
Yeah.
And so it feels weird. Also, just the idea that Amazon does all of their business online.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking back to okay, your original disruption was people used to have to go in person to buy books.
Right.
And you realized the power of the internet to disrupt that, and you could just buy books online. And now you're saying, okay, people used to have to go in person to an office to work together. There's this crazy technology called the internet and Zoom that allows us, no, forget that. Let's go back. It feels like anti-Amazon, and I was kind of disappointed by this.
We'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
This is really interesting because I feel like it is like a big company that's making this decision. Ultimately, a big company is going to kind of be slower to innovate and slower to adopt new policies.
Right.
With a big company like this, do you think that this decision is actually going to have a domino effect and impact other tech companies or other big companies to make the same decision?
So the only reason I think it would have a domino effect is if we are right and this is layoffs in disguise.
Yeah.
So, literally today, Jerome Powell just announced interest rate cuts. So I think companies are going to start making more money based on that. And I'm not an economist, so if that's wrong, too bad. I'm a philosophy major.
It's okay.
Also, we have all these new technologies about AI. We're finding more efficiencies with them. And so if I'm Microsoft and I'm like, look, we have 1 million plus employees and I don't think we need 25% of them, but I can't take the hit from a culture perspective or from a press perspective to be like, we're firing 25%.
A severance perspective.
Or a severance perspective, right? A cost perspective. And man, if only there was just an easy way that I could fire a bunch of people. Ding, 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 ding.
Right.
oh shit, like I'm just going to say we have to return to office and 20% of the people are going to quit.
Right.
That saves me a lot of trouble. And then a year later, I'm just like, okay, we ran this experiment. It's not working out. Everyone go back. Like I could see that happening. So if we're right and it is a riff in disguise, there might be a domino effect. Outside of that, I don't think so. What's your take?
No, I mean, I see that. I think what makes me nervous is that 20, you can't control that what 20% is that's leaving.
Yeah.
And so like it could be the 20% of your best performers, and the people that are staying are the ones that have to.
Yep.
And are willing to make the change that's uncomfortable in order to like keep their job.
Yep.
Potentially because they don't feel like they're marketable externally.
Yeah.
Or the ones that are just like diehard Microsoft fans in this instance that we're making up.
Yeah.
And like those aren't necessarily the best workers.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I think it won't have a domino effect on the talent side, is because ultimately this is a war of talent. And the companies that recruit the best people are going to get the best results. And I think that right now there's still enough power that the labor market has and very talented people have that they can be like Amazon.
I disagree.
Okay, but hear me out.
Okay.
If I was if I was very talented at Amazon, you don't think Andy Jassy is like, you email your boss and you're like, I'm quitting if I have to go into the office.
Yeah.
If you're super valuable,
Yeah.
you don't think Amazon is like, okay, here's the deal. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
But just like hang out at home. Nothing's going to change for you. Like,
Right.
I think they're going to make some exceptions. This is pure conjecture.
No, I agree. And actually I saw this on Twitter where apparently the like chief scientist for AWS or something, I didn't write this down because I forgot about it until now. It, like lives on a like yacht.
Yeah, you think he's coming in? He's staying on his yacht.
Yeah.
And if they're like, fire him, he's like, okay, I'll just go work for Amazon or Apple or Google or another big tech company. And so you're going to bleed talent.
Yeah.
And unless you are so fully convinced that being in person gives you an edge over a hybrid team, you're going to want the best people. And I don't think they think that because the data doesn't suggest that. So I think this is a layoff in disguise. And in like 2 years, we're going to find that they go back to a more hybrid environment.
I don't know though, because I really think that the job market, you said the labor market is strong enough to absorb good talent.
Yeah.
Just like anecdotally, what I'm seeing from like my friends and like some of, people that I know, I feel like it's really hard to find a job right now. And I think that people are going to cling on to their roles, but they're going to be pissed about it.
Yeah, maybe. But again, maybe for folks that are average talent like us. But I think if you're like super talented at Amazon.
No. If you're like the chief X, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
But it's the middle managers. Yeah. And again, they want the middle managers to leave.
Yeah.
And those people are probably a little bit more experienced. They're probably working parents. They probably left the city for the suburbs. So maybe those are the people that they're trying to weed out.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't need you.
But it does suck because we know those people are very talented.
Exactly.
And so I feel like you're just cutting off a large portion of your talent pool, not even to mention the geographic restrictions that this applies. Like, I just think you're going to lose the war on talent with a policy like this. I'm not pro in-person or pro hybrid or pro remote if I was leading company. I'm pro get the best people at this company. And I think the path they've chosen is the wrong path. It's also kind of funny because the other thing that was in the news recently was the new Starbucks CEO coming over from Chipotle.
Yeah.
This guy's CEO and is working remotely.
Yeah.
So like you're telling me like two really great companies have totally different experiences and data around hybrid productivity? BS. Like Amazon's making this up.
No, I completely agree. I think it's tax purposes and I think it's to lay off. And I think, okay, if you're not working at Amazon and you like me, when you heard this news, you're like, sucks, but why do I care?
Yeah.
Like, I think that this very well could be, like, I do disagree with you a little bit. I do think that this very well could be the start of a, like, domino effect of layoffs.
But I agree, of layoffs.
Of layoffs, yeah.
I don't think this is going to start a domino effect of big companies forcing employees back in.
Well, I think the difference here is they already had the policy of 3 days. What they've changed is 5 days, which now to our like post-pandemic brains feels like draconian. And like, you want me in on a Friday? Are you kidding?
Well, this is probably why they did it. They hear stuff like this.
Well, no, but like, it's not that I'm not doing work on a Friday. If anything, I get like jazzed and I'm like working until 6, 7 p.m. because I'm like, I get in that flow state. I'm not chatting with people. If I was in the office on Friday, you bet your ass I'm leaving at 4:00 to go across the street and get myself a little drink with my friends that I'm working with.
Yeah. It is very interesting. Like, it's hard to think about the scale of Amazon because Morning Brew has 250 people.
Fair enough,
And I will say, like, I come in 5 days a week.
Yeah.
For the most part, like 4.5 on average. And most people at Morning Brew don't. And some days, like Mondays and Fridays, like, I'm a little sad.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no one in here. It's easy to do great work because you're less, like, distracted. But I can imagine, which is the problem with hybrid, is like, some people see hybrid and they're like, cool, I can go in still 5 days a week and I like that. Yeah. And some people see hybrid and they're like, cool, I can be remote 5 days a week. And both preferences are fine on an individual level. It's just that they're not the same. And so sometimes you're like, damn, like, I wish more people were in. I've definitely felt that before. And I get why we have a hybrid policy, and I think it's the right policy. But there is that tension on an individual level, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I understand that.
And I mean, we've had the conversation on this podcast before about mentorship.
Yeah.
And we know that there is a value for younger employees. This is what the data shows, to be in the office because you learn through osmosis. And so maybe Amazon is like, okay, we have no talent pipeline because we haven't figured out how to do mentorship effectively remotely. So we'll just do the easy path and make everyone come in. I don't know, but like, I'm sympathetic to it a little bit.
I agree, but the difference between 3 and 5 to me is like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, they were already coming in for a year for 3 days. Like, they figured it out. People had started to adjust. And then to be like, actually Mondays and Fridays or Tuesdays and Fridays or whatever, you've got to be in also. It feels like overkill at this point, knowing that we have all this technology to like make this seamless 2 days out of the week.
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to say is like, why do you think like large company CEOs, it feels like they're obsessed with this idea of getting people back? Like,
because nobody wants to work anymore.
No, but like jokes aside, like, why do you think that is? Like, if I'm Andy Jassy, I'm just like, yo, I don't care.
No, I genuinely think it's that
if stock goes up and people are productive, why do I care where they are? But it seems like they do.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because for the vast majority of them, CEOs are older.
Yeah.
They've grown up in a society where that was the norm. And only recently have people started to break from that norm.
Yeah.
So of course, when you're like, something's not working at my company or strategy is flagging, things aren't working the way they used to. How did it work before when we were doing really well, when we were going gangbusters?
Yeah.
We were all in the office. That must be it. That must be the thing that's missing. Not we have 1.5 million people that we're working for in an unsustainable business model where our literal business model, it requires us to shuttle, Tide pens across the country. Like, of course, it's easier to be like, you know what's different? Working.
Yeah, it's surprising to me, and maybe I just haven't seen it, but I haven't seen a like large company CEO come out with a really affirmative statement that's like, the world changed from COVID, and we have a new, a quote unquote a new normal, and instead of going backwards, we're going forwards.
Yeah.
And yes, culture is hard to build in a hybrid setting. We're the company that's going to figure it out. Here's the policies we're going to do, and here's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
It's going to allow us to attract the best talent, put them in the best position to win. So if you're someone that's very talented, you want autonomy and you want freedom and you want flexibility, I want you to apply right now and like, let's go. I haven't seen a company like come out with a really affirmative, like engaging, motivating statement. They're all like, let's go back. And it just seems like I don't know, it's whack.
Yeah, I think there have been a few companies. I can't like think of any besides maybe like Coinbase off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, shout out to Coinbase.
Well, they have other shares, but
yeah.
But I think it's like the news is going back to the office because it enrages. I mean, it enraged me.
It gets clicks. We're here talking about it for a reason.
But I also think that there are definitely companies that have like kind of put their staff down on like, we are going to be remote first. We are going to be hybrid. We're going to make it work. It's just less sexy because that's like kind of become the norm-ish.
Yeah.
Whether you highlight it or not.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see if a Microsoft or an Apple or a Google comes out with a statement that's almost counter to Amazon. That's like, we're not going backwards, we're going forwards. And like, if you're sick of Amazon, what an opportunity to do a huge land grab and get a ton of great talent. So it looks like we just invented a strategy for Apple, Microsoft, and Google. So
reach out.
We consult if you're interested. Yeah. Our rates are pretty high because, we deliver great results. So Tim Cook, if you're listening, hit our line.
My last email at morningbrew.com. What do you think? Do you agree with us? Disagree with us? Do you have any experiences with return to office?
Yeah.
Are you also pissed? Are you like, this was supposed to be something we talked about in 2021 and never again?
Are you an Amazon employee and you want to shed more light?
Give us the tea.
Give us a scoop.
Please.
We won't leak it. We're not journalists.
We will leak it.
Well, I'm not going to leak it.
Okay.
Speak for yourself.
Well, we'll talk about it.
I would love to actually get an insight.
No, genuinely. We want tea. And if you want it to be anonymous and not go out anywhere, we won't tell anybody, but tell us that.
Perfect. All right, let's wrap this show up.
Yeah.
Okay, roll the credits.
Yeah, let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Wogu. And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you in the office, everyone.